Good morning. My name is Indira Hennard, and I am the Executive Director of the DC Rape Crisis Center. Welcome, Mayor Bowser, Director Garcia, fellow advocates, and members of the Washington, D.C. community to the Lighthouse Center for Healing. It is such an honor and a pleasure to have you all here today to introduce the Sexual Assault Victims' Rights Amendment Act of 2017. Mayor Bowser, we thank you for your leadership, for your dedication and commitment to victim services. Your support and vision ensures that victim survivors remain a top priority of the city. Know that we stand with you. Know that we look forward to continuing to partner with you and collaborate with you in responding to the city's most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I am so happy to be here. Let me thank Indira for that lovely introduction, but also for the great work that the DC Rape Crisis Center and so many of our providers provide to DC residents in significant times of need. We are here to make sure that our laws are robust, that our agencies are working together, that law enforcement and community providers and victim services organizations have open lines of communications, and that people in the district who are in need, who have been victimized, find that the system works to seek justice for them and healing for them and not re-victimization. I am joined today by members of my team, Michelle Garcia, who is the Director of the Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants for the District of Columbia, Peter Newsham, who is our Police Chief, as well as our Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice, who is in the audience. So be clear that ensuring the safety of every Washingtonian is my administration's top priority. And I know that ensuring the well-being of your family and friends is top on your list too. Over the past 2 years, we have made solid progress in reducing violence in our city, but we know that there is more that we can do to help survivors of sexual assault. And that's why today we're introducing, and we will work with the council to get past the Sexual Assault Victims' Rights Amendment Act of 2017. This legislation will help us do 4 things that will provide critical support to victims of sex crimes. First, it will ensure that victims have a certified community-based sexual assault advocate present during all law enforcement interviews. Second, it will expand these rights to services to 12-year-olds and older. And it will ensure, let me make sure I know where I am here, it will increase the available pool of advocates that will help survivors of sex crime. And lastly, it will create an investigative committee that will review sex crime complaints. This will help us identify any gaps, challenges, barriers that exist that prevent survivors from seeking and getting the treatment and help that they need. So with that, I want to invite Michelle Garcia, who is our Director of the Office of Victims Grants and Services, to say more specifically how we will get this bill in place and more help to our survivors.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you for your leadership on these issues and ensuring that victims in the district have the services and the resources that they need. This piece of legislation reflects our DC values to ensure that every victim is treated with dignity, respect, and fairness. The Sexual Assault Victims' Rights Amendment Act of 2017 builds on the historic SAVRAA of 2014. One of the pieces of that legislation established a multidisciplinary task force to look at national best practices around responding to sexual assault and to make recommendations as to how the district could enhance its responses to sexual assault victims and survivors. This legislation reflects the hard work of that task force that met and looked at these issues for over a year and a half and recommended a comprehensive set of legislative changes to again ensure that every victim, every survivor is treated fairly, has their rights ensured, and has access to the services to assist them in their healing. This piece of legislation will ensure that they have advocates who can support them throughout the system for any victim age 12 and older. And this is really critical because we know both from experience and from the research that when a crime victim, when a sexual assault victim survivor feels supported, has access to information, can make informed decisions about their own path, their own healing, and their own idea of justice, that they are more likely to engage with the criminal justice system and more likely to stay engaged with the criminal justice system, leading to greater offender accountability. This bill is victim-centered. This bill will enhance victim safety, and this bill will also increase offender accountability, making us a safer, stronger District of Columbia. We look forward to working with our many partners who are here, who had key roles in helping craft these recommendations. Many of the organizations, the DC Rape Crisis Center, the Network for Victim Recovery of DC, the DC Coalition to End Sexual Violence, Dawn, Men Can Stop Rape, and many others who provide services every day to some of the most vulnerable people in our community. I also want to thank Chief Newsham for his leadership in MPD and enhancing MPD's response to victims and survivors of sexual violence. And with that, I will turn it over to Chief Newsham.
All right, good morning. It's definitely a pleasure to be here. I'm glad to join you today to discuss the Sexual Assault Victim Rights Amendment Act. As you know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This is an important time to reaffirm our focus on survivors of sexual assault and ensuring our survivors are treated with care and compassion throughout the entire criminal justice process. This bill, as you have heard from Mayor Bowser and Director Garcia, discusses improved services for our sexual assault survivors. The most significant change in the legislation is ensuring that any victim of a sexual assault has a right to be supported by an advocate. Advocates can be a vital bridge to concrete resources for the survivors as well as critical services to support healing and well-being. As you know, sexual assaults are far too often not reported to police. Many times the cases are not reported because the survivor has no confidence that the criminal justice system will provide them the support they need. Survivors of sexual assault in the District of Columbia should feel confident and comfortable in reporting crimes to the police, and also know that the entire criminal justice system will treat them appropriately. I believe this legislation takes important steps in ensuring that our survivors of sexual assault are treated with the compassion and respect that they deserve. Now I'm going to call up Colleen Gallopin of the DC Forensic Nurse Examiners, which is our SANE program. Colleen?
Thank you, Chief Newsham. My name is Colleen Gallopin. I'm the Executive Director of the DC Forensic Nurse Examiners. Mayor Bowser, it's an honor to be here with you today, sharing my support and endorsement of SAVRAA 2017. I'm here representing both DCFNE and the DC SANE program, which is a collaboration between DCFNE, the Network for Victim Recovery of DC, and MedStar Washington Hospital Center. The SANE program provides trauma-informed crisis services to more than 450 survivors of sexual assault a year, a number that has grown every year since the program was created. We're able to offer this service thanks to the support of the Mayor's Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants and their commitment to ensuring that a continuum of services is available for every sexual assault survivor and victim in the district. We're excited to see continued efforts to expand and enhance the rights of survivors in the district, in particular the expansion of the right to an advocate. The SANE program itself offers a clear illustration of why sexual assault victim advocates matter and how they positively impact victims' experiences. Since OVSJG began supporting the current model of the SANE program, which pairs highly trained forensic nurses with full-time advocates that offer ongoing case management and access to legal support, we've seen an increase of 466% in the number of cases that convert from an initial non-report to a later report to law enforcement. This increase is often credited to the support and information survivors receive from their advocate. We believe that advocates help survivors understand and navigate the sometimes confusing criminal justice system. And the more that survivors feel they can trust and engage the criminal justice process, the more we as a community are able to hold offenders accountable and prevent future assaults. And for those survivors who choose not to engage the justice system, not yet or ever, the availability of confidential, community-based advocates helps create a safe, supportive environment where they can process their experiences and consider their options at their own pace. We at DCF&E are grateful for the partnership we have with the advocates at Network for Victim Recovery of DC. We see firsthand at every exam the impact that a knowledgeable, skilled advocate can have on a survivor. Without them, DCF&E's forensic nurses could not do what they do best. We look forward to continuing our support of all the sexual assault victim advocates working on behalf of survivors in the district. Thank you.
So I want to thank you all for your advocacy and call on you as well to continue to help us get this bill through the legislative process and into law. So I think we can take a couple of questions. I'll start with the press. Yes.
Mayor Bowser, you didn't mention in your remarks, but in the press release it mentions that part of this legislation will compel prosecutors to provide a rationale if they choose not to prosecute a case. And I don't see anyone from the U.S. Attorney's Office here. Are they on board with this? Did you consult with them about this? This has been one of the biggest complaints of victims, is that when the U.S. Attorney does not prosecute, they don't actually learn about that. Can you tell us how this will work, and whether or not USAO is on board?
It is true, and I'm going to ask Michelle and maybe Kevin Donahue to be available for any kind of background on our discussions with law enforcement. So it should be clear that I actually wanted to introduce this legislation in January or February, but there were a lot of discussions among law enforcement so that we could get everybody on board with how we advance this bill. So I'm going to ask Michelle to talk a little bit more about why we feel strongly that victims deserve to hear directly if a case is not going to advance or how it's going to advance, and we can update you on our discussions. Michelle, and then Kevin.
Thank you. This piece was a really critical component because it was one of the pieces that victims and survivors most vocally said they wanted included, that often the lack of information from prosecutors was one of the most difficult pieces of their process through the criminal justice system. We can actually report that in practice, to our knowledge, the U.S. Attorney's Office is already doing this. They are already informing victim survivors about reasons why they choose not to prosecute a case, and the assistant U.S. attorneys are actually meeting with victims and survivors if they choose to have those meetings to further explain this. So this would be really just codifying a practice that, to our understanding from the U.S. Attorney's Office, is already taking place.
And I would just highlight, coming up with this legislation, this involved hours of meetings with all stakeholders and parties involved. And I think 9 times out of 10, we were able to resolve differences, but we had a conscious effort where if there were moments where there was disagreement, we wanted to always choose the path that was going to be the most aggressive in supporting victims. And we're proud of those choices that are embodied, I think, in this legislation.
Yes, Mark.
Mayor Bowser, Councilmember Che has legislation pending that would increase or extend the statute of limitations for sex assault victims. This was legislation that was introduced 2 years ago. Chairman McDuffie never called it for a hearing when he was chair of judiciary. The new chair of judiciary, Councilmember Allen, has pledged to call a hearing. Is this legislation that you would support, extending the statute of limitation for sex assault victims to come forward and file a complaint?
I'm not familiar with the legislation, Mark, but I would definitely entertain it. Obviously, we want to protect victims, and we know that there are a lot of phenomenon that surround memories and all sorts of things that make reporting sex crimes sometimes extend beyond more traditional statutes of limitation. So I would definitely, in our agencies, will participate in that hearing process and weigh in. Thank you, everybody.